Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. Wives, submit to your husbands. Hey, that sounds pretty patriarchal, don't you think? Yes. Let's get into it. Can you believe it? Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 5 that wives should submit to their husband. The audacity, the gall, the utter temerity of Paul to insist that wives should submit to their husbands as to the Lord. Well, let's be fair. So Paul writes this instruction, and he talks about, wives should submit to their husbands and honor them and obey them. And then he writes commands for the husband that are like 4 times as long. So wives have a specific role, a specific place that they fit in the relationship. And husbands have a different place. And the role of the husband is to lead the wife. But that does not then mean that the wife is worth less than the husband just because she doesn't get to be in the driver's seat. And in fact, the analogy that's used is the head and the body. That's what Paul uses to talk about this, the head and the body. He says the husband is the head and the wife is the body. And you can make all sorts of extrapolations from this. You can say, well, that's because the husband, as the head, directs where the body's going to go. But the husband, as the head, also needs to understand the needs of the body. And he says, for nobody hated his own body. He talks about how husbands should love their wives and should rule their wives. And this isn't in a way of a despot or a tyrant or somebody who just abuses or neglects their wife. This isn't what's being talked about here in Ephesians. And Paul describes it as somebody and their own body. Nobody hated their own body. This isn't something where your body is starving of thirst, and you, as the head, as the consciousness, you're like, good, I'm in charge, and you should starve, or you should be thirsty, or whatever. No, the idea that the head is in charge of the body also includes this idea that the head is supposed to protect the body, in the sense that it's supposed to make choices that benefit the body as though they are one united unit. And that's ultimately what the thing is. That's ultimately what the analogy is about. Likewise, the body has these specific tasks, the roles to be subservient to the head, to do what the brain commands to stay out of trouble, to stay out of danger, and to use its power to support, like the shoulders and the neck, to support the head, to direct the head around like the body. The body carries around the head on its shoulders. So it's not that one is more important than the other, they just have different tasks, they have different roles to fulfill. So you can say, oh, it's a patriarchal system. It's bigoted and it's intolerant and it's not fair. Well, nobody said it's supposed to be fair. The body's different than the head. Men are different from women. And I hate to break it to you if this is the first time you've heard that, but it's true. Men and women aren't the same, and a husband and a wife do not have the same roles in a relationship. They're not interchangeable. The husband cannot bear children, and the wife, she cannot do the role of the husband, which usually means to lead and direct the family. Now, this doesn't mean that the wife shouldn't work. I mean, you can read, Proverbs, I don't remember what it was, where it's talking about this woman, a precious woman who can find one like this. And she's out, she's making clothes for all her children and selling selling things at the market and all these other things. It's not saying that the wife shouldn't work in terms of industry, but it's saying that ultimately the husband is responsible for the well-being of the wife, and responsible for his own well-being as well, I suppose. And the wife's role is ultimately to submit and support the husband. They should work together as a team. Now, this role of husband and wife, this gets even trickier when you try to have relationships that don't have those roles in them. And an example of this is when a man and a woman are living together and they aren't married. The husband is not connected to the wife in the same way, the same permanent status that he would be if they were married. They have become one flesh, perhaps. They maybe have had that one flesh union in bed, but that doesn't then mean that the husband is going to direct the rest of his life to taking care of the wife. That's one of the reasons that marriage is so important. It's a lifelong commitment. So when you have a husband and a wife, or when you have a man and a woman rather, and the man is with a woman, and then the man is with another woman, the man is with another woman, or the woman is with another man, a woman is with another man, a woman is with another man, it's like a body that rips its head off and puts a new head on, and then just waits long enough for the flesh and the bones and the tendons and muscle to stitch together, and then rips it off again, and then puts on another one. This is doing violence to both the body and the head every time a body and a head are united and ripped away. Now this is whether it's a man and a woman getting together and not being married, or in divorce. And yes, maybe divorce is just one person's fault. In fact, a lot of times it is. But it's still painful. It's still something that shouldn't be glorified and shouldn't be thought of as neutral. It's something that's horrible and tragic and does damage, does violence to the body and the head, does violence to the husband and the wife. And if I wanted to make this video even more controversial, we can talk about the alternative attempts to make an alternative union to what God instituted with a husband and a wife. If you try to have two husbands, like trying to have two heads, and then you stitch them together, in your Frankenstein's monster over here, you're just stitching body parts together that don't go together. You stitch two heads together and they have no support. They have no body to carry them around, no lungs to give them oxygen or heart to pump blood. Or you have two women and you try to make a marriage out of two bodies instead of a body and a head. And then you've got nothing, you've got no direction. It's not designed to work that way. God didn't design it to work this way. It isn't that God just arbitrarily said, oh, well, I don't care if you love, you're a guy and you love another guy. I don't want you to be married because I'm a big, mean God. And it's nothing like that. It's that God knows how he designed men and women to be. They're complementary. The woman is not redundant. Neither is the man redundant. If you're going to say that you can stitch two heads together or two bodies together, then either the body or the head is redundant. So which is it? Are husbands redundant or are wives redundant? Which is useless? Which is not necessary at all? So in addition to it being a moral travesty, it's also something that's just, it's painful, it's damaging, it's harmful to the people who are involved in that. And God knew what he was doing when he made men and women. He knew what he was doing. He knew when he made them complementary. When he took man and he took the rib out of man and then reunited it with man as a wife in marriage, Adam and Eve. He knew what he was doing, that he was uniting these two parts of a greater whole. So Ephesians 5, you've got this message to the women, you've got this message to the men, to wives and to husbands. You've got another reminder that God designed them male and female, and the two shall be one flesh. And it's ultimately a picture of a greater reality. The marriage, so the body and the head is a picture of marriage. Marriage is a picture of Christ and the church. This is a picture of how God loves his people. It's this perfect thing where God is the perfect head of the body of the church. And the church is the perfect wife of Christ, who is the husband, right? It's all of these analogies point to this relationship between God and his people. God perfectly knows what's best for his people, and he sacrifices for his people. As you've seen on the cross, he also leads his people in the right direction. Like a head that knows everything and knows what's best for the body, Christ leads his church around. So when God says, this is good, that's bad, don't do that, that's bad, don't do that, the body shouldn't be in rebellion to the head. The people of God shouldn't be in rebellion to God. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any more sense than if your head were to turn one way and your body were to turn the other direction and you tried to go in two different directions at the same time. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. If you're going to be connected to Christ, if you're going to be connected to God, then you have to know that your role is to submit to God's authority. This means that when God says, this is right to do, this is wrong to do, that you have to agree with that, even if you don't like it. There may be some places in the Bible, some verses in the Bible where it doesn't jive with, what you were taught, what you grew up with. But that's not your role to decide. It's not. You're the body. You have a very important role. You have a very important role. You have a very important role in the entire union with the head, with Christ. But it's not your place to decide the direction. But yeah, that's kind of a summary of everything that goes on in Ephesians chapter 5. And there's so much more to get into. It's such a beautiful section. And ultimately, if you read it, don't read it and look at it and say, well, Paul sure had some weird ideas. Because it's not Paul. This is God writing through Paul. Paul even quotes Jesus, and Jesus quotes Genesis. This is a continuous thing. From the beginning of the Bible, all the way through the end of the Bible, there's a continuous understanding of marriage, of men and women, of Christ and the church. And it's explained more and more over time, but it's the same idea. And that idea is that God, the head of the body of believers, loves his people and died for his people and is willing to sacrifice for his people. And his people in joyful gratitude should submit to the head, to the authority that was willing to die on their behalf. Ultimately, it's a gospel message. You don't have to be the head to figure out where to go with life. You've already got a perfectly good head on your shoulders, and that head is Christ. So, in all those things, husbands, honor your wives and protect your wives. Wives, submit to your husbands as you submit to the Lord. Children of God, submit to God. It's as simple as that. God loves you and he died for you. And look, pizza's just about ready. Let's get some. Take care.